Welcome to this new how-to. In this how-to we're going to look at the trim systems of this Boeing 247D. The Boeing 247D has, I would say, several trim systems which you might not be aware of. Normally in, for example, the Cessna, you would only use one of them, mainly to, I would say, trim that you're, I would say, continuously fly on the same altitude. But this aircraft has multiple ones. So let's go inside the cockpit and let's figure out where we can find all of them. Well, they're located in 3 spots. The first one is here. It's the aileron trim crank. Then we've got the rudder trim crank, and here we've got the elevated trim crank. The elevated trim crank, that's probably the one which most of us know, because you can, I would say, change it, right? I'm changing it as we speak, easily using my throttle, right? My throttle joystick. I've got, I would say, button which is assigned to the trim for the, in this case, the elevation, which will influence my system. Right, it will influence if my aircraft will continue to climb or will start to decrease. So if we go outside of the aircraft, you will see that something has changed, and we don't need to look at the I would say wings, but we need to go to the back of the aircraft. And if we would go here, we will see that some things have changed, right? So if I'm now gonna change it, let me show it live. You can see that this changes massively, right? We can either change to this, or I can change it to this, or I can level out, right? Probably I want to start with leveling it out, and then I would say once I'm in the air, I might want to modify this to ensure that I'm continuously flying at the same speed. So this was the first one. So let's go inside and let's look at the second one. The second one is on the floor, right? It's the rudder trim, and as the name already says, it allows you to manage the rudder. So if I gonna turn this button and then go outside again, then we can see that something has changed. But you might ask, okay, hey, what has changed? Well, look at this part of the rudder. This part is now continuously standing to the left side. So if I now go inside the aircraft and we'll turn it the other way, you will see that it goes to the other way, right? So this is how you can manipulate, I would say, the rudder and make sure that you're flying straight. So if you would say for some reason if the aircraft continuously wants to turn left or right, then you might want to have a look at the rudder trim and you might want to center it. So centering it is, I would say, between brackets, kind of easy. You put it in the center, and if you, I would say, 100% put it in the center, I would say it should be pretty aligned, right? You can see it's kindly offline, so let me, I would say, adjust it a bit. So here you go. So now it's correct. So that was the second one. Now let's look at the last one. And for the last one, we need to move over to this side, which is the aileron trim. And the aileron trim crank allows you to change the aileron, and that's, I would say, the kind of, let's say, turning ratio of the aircraft, right? So you can move it either left or right. And I would say it isn't that easy, so you need to keep your mouse on it. And then once we're done, you can, I would say, turn pretty far until a certain moment, right? That's what I've hit here, and then you can turn it further. So if we would now go outside, we don't see any changes here, right? We don't see any changes on the, rudder, but we do see changes here, right? So what you see now is that this wing, the left wing, this stands to the bottom. Now if we would go over the aircraft and would go to the other side, then we would see that this part hasn't changed a lot, right? It has changed a bit, but not too much. So it only changes the left wing. So it allows you to individually, I would say, manage this part of the wing. So if we go inside again, and if we turn it the complete other way around, so the easiest way is to stand in the center of the crank and then simply move it. And I'm now turning it very, I would say, very hard, right? But that's because I'm on the ground. Because you can see that now, instead of pointing down, it points upwards. And that, of course, has its, I would say, reflections once you're in the air, right? So if you go again here and go downstairs here, you won't see any changes here, right? So that's good. So it only changes the left wing. So that's something you need to understand. So based on this, I thought, hey, maybe it would be nice to also see if the, I would say, co-pilot has kind of, I would say, a crank, right? Because maybe there's also, the co-pilot has something which we can use. So let's have a look if we can figure it out. It's kind of hard, right? To go to the co-pilot seat. Oh, here we go. Let's remove this one. And as you can see, there's, I would say, really nothing, right? The co-pilot has, I would say, this system to do the manual gear selector, but that's different, right? So there are 3 trims. Here's the one which allows us to change the elevation. Here's the one which allows us to change the rudder. And here's one where we can change the aileron. So I will pause the recording, I will go airborne, and then we will play around with these buttons while we're flying, because on the ground nothing will happen. And we're back, and we're airborne, right? So we're flying around somewhere in the US, something on the East Coast. So the first one we're gonna use is, of course, the most easiest one. Let me, let's say, change this a bit. So we're gonna use this one, right? The one in the center. And the one in the center, keep in mind what I said, right? It allows you to change the elevation or to level off. So to allow us to, say, stay on a certain altitude, which is, I would say, in some cases really useful because you want to fly on the altitude. Keep in mind that you probably need to change it several times while you're flying, right? It's not, I would say, really an autopilot, but a voice that you continuously need to pull the, I would say, the joysticks, right? Or the official name is, of course, the yokes, right? Always forgetting that name. So keep that in mind, right? You can always do that. While we're looking at this, I'd say pretty interesting that we're not flying at maximum speed. So that's one of them. So now we change this one. Let's look what happens if we change the rudder one, right? Which was the second one we looked at. Because what you can see is that the aircraft kind of wants to go continuously to the left or to the right, right? It's not really centered. So let's move this one. Let's see what happens. So we're gonna go to the center, and you can see that it tries to, that the, I would say, back of the aircraft wants to make a different move, right? And I would say that's kind of expected, because if we would now go to the back of the aircraft, we will see that this part of the wing has changed a bit, right? Be careful with it, because you can see that it also goes into the wrong direction and sometimes results in that you are gonna decrease the altitude. So we're gonna quickly put it back to the center, because if we go to the center, it should level off the aircraft again. Right, so let me go back to it. You can see that the rudder has now been centered again. But this is one of the ways you can control if you're going left or right. But this is more to do the correction, right? So in case you've got, let's say, a deviation and you want to correct it, then you can use the other trim, which is over here on the bottom side. Then, of course, we've got the most, I would say, tricky one, which is the aileron. And the aileron, again, will move the left position only. So you can see that the aileron is already set a little bit. So let's see if we can, I would say, turn it around. So let's move it. In this case, you will see that the wing is now, let's say, upstairs, or say a little bit to the up, and the aircraft will start to turn, right? So in this case, it's really dangerous because you can see that it also moves down the aircraft. So be very careful with this button. Only make very small adjustments. If you leave the joystick, if I will leave the joystick completely, I would say, well, if I release it, that's the best wording, it will go again right to the left side. So I'm really, if you would see a picture of my joystick, it's now in the upper right corner, and I'm trying to push it in the right direction. So let's see if we can fix that neatly by using this button, of course. So it's now being set to default again. Oh, sorry, I moved it the wrong way. Let's see. It's already going better. Let's also try to increase the altitude, so we're gonna increase or gonna adjust the trim here also. And if we would go look outside, you can see it's almost centered, but still has, I would say, the kind of, let's say, it still wants to move to the other side, right? So you can continue turning and see what happens, because normally what will happen is it will center, right? For some reason this aircraft really wants to go to the left side, and that's of course something we don't want it to do. And currently you can see that it flies, I would say, pretty straight. Maybe we need to move it a little bit further. But again, make small changes, because if you're making two changes which are too big, then I would say things will go wrong. And then things will happen as you just saw. So I'm gonna move it again a little bit further. It's you can compare it a little bit with the, I would say, with the one which manages the yoke, right? Which manages the elevation. That one also requires you to make small adjustments. This one, I would say, it's 100% the same. If you make two big changes, you'll probably end up somewhere crashing on the ground, and that's of course what we don't want to do. You can see that it now requires some adjustment here again, so we're gonna change it back. And then you will see that the wing has adjusted. And we'll try to level off, right? It's, I would say, continuously, I would say, a game which you need to play. So it's a game within a game, so a game within Flight Simulator, to make sure that you're flying straight, because else you continuously need to correct the aircraft, and I would say that's probably not what you want to do. So make small adjustments and then see how it levels off. If it levels off correctly, then you're good. But it could be that, I would say, due to the wind or something, you need to make some adjustments further on. So here ends this video. In this video we looked at the 3 trim options which we have in the aircraft, especially in the Boeing 247D. The most modern aircrafts only, I would say, this one, the elevator trim. And you don't need to, let's say, modify these options, right? So you can do it in this one, in the Boeing 247D, which makes it even more realistic to fly in. Again, here at this video, I hope you liked it. If you liked it, then consider to use the like button. If you got questions or comments, then feel free to post them in the comment box below. And if you want to stay up to date about new videos I'm posting, then make sure that you're subscribing to my channel. Thanks for watching and see you next time.